It's midday in Nigeria. Welcome to Lunchtime Politics on Channels Television. I'm Ayotunde Balogun. First, the highlights. President Bola Tinubu joins other world leaders at the G20 CWA conference holding in Germany. Gunmen attack home of former leader of the River State House of Assembly, Edison Ehie, as security operatives besiege the residence. Plus, Plateau Governor Mutfwang to challenge his sack by the Court of Appeal at the Supreme Court. President Bola Tinubu today joins other heads of state and government of the CWA member countries as bilateral partners, as well as heads of international organizations in Berlin, Germany, for the G20 CWA conference taking place alongside the 4th G20 Investment Summit, co-hosted by the German government and German business associations. The event will deliberate on the immediate enhancement of economic and business cooperation with a view to outlining concrete measures to boost investments in critical areas such as energy, trade infrastructure, and new technologies, among others. President Tinubu arrived at the Willy Brandt Berlin Brandenburg International Airport in Berlin on Sunday and was received by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tuga, in charge d'affaires of Nigeria's embassy in Germany, Ambassador Ngekem Regina Ocheni. Ambassador Tuga, who was the erstwhile envoy in Germany before his appointment as Nigeria's foreign minister, will set Nigeria's agenda as President Tinubu drives Nigeria's participation at the G20 Compact with Africa conference. Tuga will facilitate bilateral agreements with partners, heads of international organizations, to deliberate on the immediate enhancement of economic and business cooperation with a view to outlining the concrete measures to boost investments in critical areas such as energy, trade, infrastructure, and new technologies. Now, this visit also affirms President Bola Tinubu's commitment to diplomatic reciprocity, as the invitation to Germany from the German Chancellor is being honored following the German Chancellor's visit to Abuja and Lagos, Nigeria. The home of former leader of the River State House of Assembly, Edison Ehie, has allegedly been attacked by gunmen. Although the lawmaker escaped unhurt, a source told Channels Television that the residence of Mr. Ehie was attacked on Sunday night by some armed thugs and rogue police officers. The residence was, however, being besieged by security operatives this morning. Mr. Edison Ehie was recently removed from his position as leader of the assembly. He would later emerge speaker of one of the two groups laying claim to the leadership of the House. In a telephone conversation, Mr. Ehie recounts what transpired at his residence on Sunday night.
Last night I was home with my family when we were alerted by my security officers that some bands have just arrived at the gate and making efforts to break into my house. So my security agents had to repel them. I resisted them heavily. They shot in the air, and my security details held their grounds and refused to open the gate. So immediately my younger brother who stayed with me had to put on his camera and came out and started shouting that they are being recorded, and after some minutes they ran away. We have extracted the CCTV footage and will soon send it for the world to see what happened.
Okay,
I know that.
Are they policemen? Do you see them on police uniform?
Yes. Some are very recognized policemen, notably one Mr. London, who was former camp commandant, governor, and one Maserati. They are known policemen, and my security officers, that's to me, recognize them very, very well.
Okay, one of my colleagues was in your residence, the place that you were supposed to be staying, the Deputy Speaker's residence. Have you left there, or do you have another residence? Because from what he's saying, there is no sign of any attack or anything in the environment, or sign of police presence, or sign of anything happening. Where is this new residence you're talking about, and what is happening at the residence as we speak?
I was Deputy Speaker at the 9th Assembly 2019 to 2023. And I left there like 4 months ago because I'm no longer Deputy Speaker. I handed over to the new Deputy Speaker. So anybody would have gone there to look for me. They be living in the old world. My new residence is known by everybody, 30 Border Street GRA. So I speak to you, security has cordoned everywhere. If you come to that street, you'll see security agents, officers from State Command everywhere.
The appeal court sitting in Abuja has nullified the election of Governor Caleb Mutfwang of Plateau State. A 3-member panel in a unanimous decision also ordered the electoral umpire, that's INEC, the Independent National Electoral Commission, to withdraw the certificate of return issued to Mr. Mutfwang and issue same to the candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Mr. Nintawe Yilwada. Our correspondent, Emperor Simon, reports.
The Abuja division of the appeal court is filled with political party members from Plateau State, lawyers and journalists who have turned out for the judgment in the appeals filed by the All Progressives Congress and its candidate, Mr. Nintawe Yilwada, against the election of Governor Caleb Mutfwang of Plateau State. This is coming about a week after the 3-member panel reserved its judgment in the appeals brought before it on October 10, 2023 by the appellants who are challenging the victory of Governor Mutfwang on the ground that the latter was not qualified to have contested the March 18, 2023 election because he was not validly sponsored and nominated by his political party, the People's Democratic Party, PDP. An election tribunal sitting in Plateau State had struck out the petitions of the appellants on the grounds that the issue of lack of structure by the PDP in Plateau State and whether Governor Mutfwang was sponsored by his party or not were internal party affairs and that they were also pre-election matters. However, the Court of Appeal on resumption set aside the judgment of the tribunal, describing it as highly incompetent. Delivering the lead judgment, Justice Elfreda Williams Dawodo noted that under Section 134C of the Electoral Act and Section 177 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, it is the sole right of the political party to sponsor its candidate, having met the necessary requirements to do so.
And indeed, Governor Caleb Mutfwang has decided to approach the Supreme Court to challenge his sack by the Court of Appeal. Mr. Mutfwang, who described the judgment of the appellate court as a temporary setback, says it won't stop his plan to reposition the north-central state for unity, peace and progress. Now, the governor expressed confidence of getting his mandate back at the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court. He urges supporters and members of the People's Democratic Party in the state to stay calm, saying he has instructed his legal team to file an appeal at the Supreme Court. Legal luminary Mr. Femi Falana has re-emphasized the fact that the Nigerian judiciary has no business in deciding on concluded elections. Now, speaking on the recent Court of Appeal judgment sacking the governors of Kano and Plateau states, Mr. Falana says the Plateau issue is based on the disobedience to a court judgment, while Kano's judgment is based on an error from an official of INEC. He was a guest on our political program, Sunday Politics.
The stakeholders should go back to the drawing table so that the involvement of judges in our elections can be completely eliminated. Nigeria is the only country in the world today where results of elections are determined by judges. It shouldn't be so. With respect to the decisions of the Court of Appeal, that is not the end of the road. All those who are dissatisfied will have to go to the Supreme Court. But if you look at what happened in Lagos, what is different from Plateau, is that you are being told in the case of Plateau, there was a judgment of the High Court to the fact that primaries have to be conducted. The judgment, as usual, was dishonored, disregarded, disobeyed, and elections went on. I think the last time I can recall that the Supreme Court berated the Nigerian political class to learn to comply with the doctrine of least spending was the case of Mr. Peter Obi and INEC. When in 2007, in spite of the case of Mr. Peter Obi that was pending the High Court, INEC went and proceeded to hold the election. The Supreme Court made the point that it was a risk on the part of INEC to engage in a wasteful exercise by conducting that election while the case of Mr. Peter Obi was pending. Now,
all right, so for more reactions on the Court of Appeal judgments in those elections, talking about in Kano and, of course, in Plateau State, we've been joined on the program by Mr. Kaide Adilola, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Thank you for joining us on Lunchtime Politics.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's start with your reaction, of course, to these appeal court judgments that sacked 3 governors, as it were, in just about a week from last week, talking about Kano, Zamfara, and, of course, just yesterday, in Plateau State. What was your reaction to these court judgments, particularly the one of Plateau State?
Well, let me put it this way. We must begin to recognize the fact that the electorate is anxious to see that justice is done. And in this situation, justice means ensuring that those the electorate vote for are the ones who come to govern them. But that being as it may, we cannot expect our courts to simply pander to the whims and caprices of the electorate. They have laws that they have to interpret. They have statutes that they have to give credence to. And they must determine cases or petitions brought before them based upon the evidence before them, based upon the facts brought before them. And as such, it is very difficult to find faults with courts when they have decided this case is based upon the law. But let me take them one after the other. In the case of Plateau State, for example, the court said, oh, well, the governor has to return his certificate of return on the grounds that the internal structure of the party didn't throw him up as the candidate who should have contested on behalf of the PDP. Now, the question is, was that candidate qualified to run? I recall that also that the court said something about pre-election and post-election. Pre-election will be the process by which a candidate is forwarded to INEC. In this situation in Plateau State, there had been some wrangling, and the High Court said, go and conduct the primaries again in all the 17 local governments, I think. They conducted in only 5. Now the question is, who can challenge that lack of credence to the decision of that court, or obedience rather, to the decision of that court? I would think it would be somebody internally. But the question then is, should the Court of Appeal then throw out this governor because, well, post-election qualification is an issue? In this situation, what we ask ourselves is, what is qualification? Qualification, ordinarily speaking, should be a man who is 35 years old is entitled to contest for governorship. He should also have a minimum of school cert, and he must belong to a political party. Now, who determines who is a member of a political party? That, I think, is a question that we should begin to ask. Is it sufficient for a party to simply say, oh, Mr. Bayelsa is our member, we have sponsored him, and that should serve? Or should it be by way of presenting the list of members of the political party? I think, and I know some of my colleagues may not share my view, I think if the governor was presented validly by his political party, and indeed he was sponsored by them, then the issue about his non-qualification should not be an issue that would disqualify him. To that extent, I think it will be a good day for us to hear what the Supreme Court will have to say concerning this, because we've had a lot of cases about people who have not been properly presented by way of primaries. But in this situation, I think it was an internal matter. But then again, I concede that the Court of Appeal justices knew what they were doing, but I don't think they were right.
All right,
and then in the case of Kano State.
Okay, please go ahead. Yes, go ahead. In the case of Kano State.
In the case of Kano State, we're talking about ballot papers that were not stamped, ballot papers that were not signed, and as well as coalition papers that were also taken from one coalition center to another that also were not stamped and signed. Those are very major things. And these were in different polling units, all relating to the candidature of the governor who has been elected. That is something that one wants to consider very serious. How did that happen? That about 165,000 votes, that's a whole lot, in favor of the governor, Mr. Dauda Lawal, were not signed and were not stamped. Was it coincidence? Was it intentional? And if that is the case, we shouldn't allow a situation where ballot papers infiltrate the process and we allow those ones to count. That is why I think with the case of Kano, it might be an uphill task indeed to see how ballot papers that are not in compliance should be counted and those votes should be allowed to stay. It's interesting, however, that the political party, APC, challenging, went to court, but the candidate himself, Mr. Gonna, forgive me if I'm pronouncing his name wrongly, wasn't a part of that, but that is neither here nor there, because the political party can challenge the outcome of an election.
All right, so it's interesting, of course. I was just going to ask you while you were speaking on again, that where does the electoral umpire itself, INEC, stand in all of this scenario, particularly referring to the incident in Kano State, 165,000 ballot sheets, like the judgment says, not being stamped or signed. I mean, they have done the elections, and winners have been announced, of course, in Plateau State and by extension in Zamfara State. Now, the electorate, who believe have voted for the candidates, a huge number of them, of their supporters, majority of the supporters. Now, what do you think is going to be the feeling towards the electoral umpire, INEC? Where do they stand in all of this scenario?
Quite frankly, if I were in their shoes, I'd be very disappointed. And although I'm not a citizen of Kano State, I'm very disappointed. INEC has a duty to conduct these elections in a way that will leave all of us satisfied, no matter what part of the country we belong to. 165,000 ballot papers, not signed, not stamped, that's dereliction of duty. And it doesn't matter what state we're talking about. People have come out to have their verification done as voters. They had papers given to them. They thumbprinted, put the paper in the boxes. They have done their bit. And therefore, INEC to be so negligent, forgive my saying irresponsible, enough to not stamp or sign those ballot papers and allow them to go on, 165,000 of them, not 20, not 30, not 100. It is wrong in the extreme. And somebody ought to be punished for this. You see, we will not develop a democracy if we allow people to go on unpunished, or was a mistake, or was an oversight. Oversight, that's not an oversight. It was either a deliberate act or was just gross irresponsibility. Either way, someone ought to be punished for it. That's my candid view.
All right, so what do you think will be the implication of this judgment, I mean, going forward, particularly in Plateau State? And of course, now that especially, the State House of Assembly in Plateau State vis-a-vis the federal lawmakers who are the National Assembly in Abuja. Well, if we have a
a situation where the law has not been complied with, there are no sentiments, unfortunately, to apply in law. I mean, the law is the law. The justice of the Court of Appeal or Supreme Court or even tribunals have to apply the law. And unless we strictly apply the law, we might find ourselves, neither here nor there. And people want to be sure that we have a clear idea of what the law is. I think, again, political parties, in concert with INEC, should have a program by which everybody knows what's expected of them before the elections take place. And I think they really do. And all political parties have the legal advisors. But what do? I think they just think where we can go on, and if anything happens, we go to court. There again, the courts must begin to slam lawyers as well as the litigants with heavy costs. That's where people do not come to court when they know the wrong thing has done. But for those who are in the House of Assembly or National Assembly, if they fall into the same category of having papers not properly stamped, they might also be facing the same consequences.
Mr. Kaide Adeolola, thank you so much for your thoughts on the program Lunchtime Politics. We do appreciate your views indeed.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, the police in Kano State has vowed to deal with anyone trying to organize protests after the appeal court delivered its judgment. Now, the commissioner stated this in a press briefing, which had both party representatives at the police headquarters in Kano. According to him, some political groups are already mobilizing to shut down the state for 40 days.
It is as a result of credible information at the command disposal, which revealed the intention of some group of political party supporters using unconventional media platform, mobilizing people and planning to enter the street and position themselves at strategic location in protest to the recent Kano State Governorship Appeal Court verdict, which was delivered on Friday, the 17th of November 2023. The intention of the protesters is to shut down the state in an action which may likely result in violence. It is on this note that the leadership of both the New Nigeria People's Party and All Progressive Congress were invited for a meeting at the office of the Commissioner of Police in the presence of all the heads of security agencies in the state, advising them to be extra careful and whoever intend to conduct any protest or procession should do so in accordance with the provision of the law. You will all recall that prior to the court ruling, the leadership of both the NNPP and APC were invited by Kano State Police Command, where a peace accord was signed on Thursday, the 16th November 2023. The objective of the meeting was to maintain harmony and ensure that the political landscape in Kano State remained peaceful.
All right, for more reaction now coming from the appeal court judgment in Kano State, we're being joined from Abuja by the APC legal advisor Abdul Fage to give us his thoughts on this recent development. Great to have you on the program Lunchtime Politics.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
All right, so let's quickly look at this judgment. Of course, the APC, what's your reaction? Give us what your thoughts are concerning this one. Should this come, or did this come as a surprise, or was it really expected?
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, viewers. You see, the judgment of the Court of Appeal handed down on Friday. It's not come as a surprise to me and to the generality of people, particularly the lawyers in Nigeria and across the globe. And the reason is this, on issue, particularly the issue of challenging election, in Kano State election, as well as the petition we filed, we were all aware that there are 3 grounds worthy of being filing any petition. Once you are dissatisfied with declaration or return made by INEC, And in our own case, we filed a petition challenging, we had three grounds. And these three grounds, particularly the one that many people are making comment on, particularly lawyers, on that issue of qualification. In our ground, there was declaration or return made by INEC. And under Electoral Act, there is provision which said if you are dissatisfied with the declaration or return, you can challenge election based on non-compliance with Electoral Act and other Eastern laws, or with regard to qualification of the candidate, of the winner of the election, that is, the person that was declared or returned as a winner was not qualified to contest that election. So that declaration or return were not validly made. That is the second ground. Then the third ground is issue of majority of lawful vote, that the person that was declared or returned as a winner did not win that election with majority of lawful vote. Now, on the second one, the issue of qualification, if we are not tying it, that's section 177
Mr. Fage, pardon me to interrupt.
Of the Constitution, as well. Hello?
Mr. Fage, yeah, pardon me to interrupt. You said that the winner, the proposed winner of the election didn't get the majority. Yes. Are you referring to the votes that were declared as invalid, the 165,000 which were not signed or stamped, I should say, by the electoral umpire, by INEC, on the ballot sheet?
Perfectly well, perfectly well. Because before the vote will be termed as valid vote, it must satisfy certain requirements. The first, after all the issue of accreditation and so many things, this issue of the ballot papers to be signed, stamped, and dated by the presiding officer or any official of the INEC is mandatory. The INEC officials are under obligation to perfect this duty because the word shall was used or is used in that section. Because, in fact, last week when I watched one of your programs about two senior advocates of Nigeria were hammering that there is nowhere in the Electoral Act where the issue of signing, stamp, and dating ballot papers is stated. I wholly agree with them. There is nowhere in the Electoral Act where this requirement was made or is made. There is nowhere in the Electoral Act. But Electoral Act is not the only law that is guiding the conduct of election in our country. We have Constitution, Electoral Act, election manuals, guidelines for the conduct of election, and even the timetable issued by INEC. All these are laws that are made to govern the conduct of election. Not 21 of the INEC manuals for the conduct of 2023 election made it a duty on the presiding officer or any official to affix his signature, put stamp of INEC, and put date of that election on the ballot paper. And there are plethora of authorities, particularly in the case of Ajadi versus Ajibola. The Court of Appeal, while handing down its decision, made it known to the whole world that that manual for the conduct of election, as well as guidelines issued by INEC, were made pursuant to Constitution and Electoral
All right, Mr.
Act.
Abdul-Fage. All right, Mr. Abdul-Fage, I'll have to interrupt you there.
They are enjoying the same course.
I'll have to interrupt you there. We definitely have to. Yes, I'll have to interrupt you there. My apologies, but we definitely have to round it up there. We have very little time to spend, of course, on the program. But we do appreciate your thoughts on the program. Lunchtime Politics will definitely be keeping tabs on the situation as it unfolds. Of course, meanwhile, the NNPP, we should have had a guest, Robert On, the National Legal Advisor of the New Nigeria People's Party, NNPP. Unfortunately, he couldn't join us for this interview. Moving on, the deputy governorship candidate of the All Progressives Congress in the November 11th, 2023 governorship poll in Bayelsa State, Joshua MacGyver, has been reacting to recent comments credited to former President Goodluck Jonathan on the polls. Now, his comment is over Dr. Jonathan's threat of relocation from Bayelsa if the candidate of the APC had won the election. Mr. Joshua says that the expectation from the former president is to play a fatherly and non-partisan role and not support any candidate being a former president. Former President Jonathan had on Friday said he planned to relocate his aged mother out of Bayelsa if Governor Duye Diri had lost at the November 11th governorship polls in Bayelsa State. And Governor Diri was successful in his re-election bid after winning the governorship poll held on November the 11th. And with that, we draw the curtain on the program Lunchtime Politics. Many thanks for watching. I'm Ayo Tunde Balogun.